Good news, everybody, because GOG is going back to Good Old Games. But for those of you who never quite accepted that Good Old Games rebranded how they sound away from Good Old Games to GOG, no, GOG is still the company name. But they're focusing on old games and preservation, and that's really good news, I think.
Absolutely. It comes off the back of them, obviously it didn't work out for them in the past financially. And then they're like, well, okay, we'll try a bunch of new games. And then that didn't work out philosophically because everyone's like, well, you're DRM free, but your games have DRM. What's your point? And now they're like, you raise a very good point. Actually, let's think about that. Okay, we'll do the old games again.
Yeah.
Sweet.
I have a feeling it's mostly going to be old games and then new CD Projekt Red releases where they can, of course, get more of a slice. One of the big benefits of having your own store. So, they say that originally GOG stood for Good Old Games. Their goal is for GOG to once again become the best place for classic games. So they're going back to their USP, unique selling point, because what they were doing sadly wasn't working. In previous videos we've covered their financial woes. There were some layoffs from the GOG division of the company as well. So it was like, of all of CDP Group, while GOG were doing cool things like with Galaxy 2, they just weren't doing as well, and they were having the financial issues.
Yep.
So yeah, they say though that their game, or their job even, is not just to release games already on the market. And this is where I think we as customers can be getting a lot more value. They say it's to make them available for everyone. Often that means fixing them, making sure they run on modern systems. So far, they've achieved that by internal work and various corporations with DOSBox or ScumVM, among others. But in other cases, they've had to solve legal contrivances because rights and ownership for old games is a total disaster sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where I think it's like, you see this, okay, I can now see you're genuinely trying to provide a bunch of value to the user. You're definitely going, okay, well, we're not just doing like whatever we want or whatever's easy. We're literally going, these are hard problems that we're legally solving. And you're like, that's exactly what we want of someone in this market.
A nice little thing they highlight here. If you like to collect the extra goodies connected to the game, such as guidebooks, wallpapers, concept art, and much more, there's a good chance some of the ones you've gotten on GOG are because of their cooperation with the Video Game History Foundation. It's another example of something cool, and when you think about like PC gaming, what you think about is big box releases, the types that make for really good LGR videos that people really enjoy. So while it's not the same getting it digitally, it's still nice to get that. It's nice that, you can maybe get the original very chunky manual PDF. Used to be such a big part of games. And indeed, used to be where they'd put lore, put cool things for you to find in the manual.
Yeah, no, I really, I think there's actually a vaguely modern example of that where Tunic, the indie game, has a digital manual with it that you need to consult to figure out stuff. I thought that was really interesting. I haven't played the game yet, but it's a really cool idea. But I think the fact that they're working with the Video Game History Foundation is interesting, and it shows kind of how serious they are, because obviously it costs money and time to organize with a foundation like that. And then I looked a little bit into them, and I'm like, okay, there might be something like kind of going on behind the surface, or like something that I don't know, but everything that those guys are doing seems really interesting.
Nice. And then to sort of help user experience of this then, they're reviving that Good Old Games concept, and that means they're adding a Good Old Game tag on GOG. You can get a bit confusing. But basically, the Good Old Games tag is showcasing over 500 games that they have deemed iconic classics. And I think it's also one of those things where, like, if it has the tag, you can kind of buy it with a bit more confidence. Though what is a bit not nice is that not Baldur's Gate, that probably deserves it, but BioShock. BioShock is a good old game now.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Yeah, BioShock is 15 years old in August, because it was August 2007. And one other thing I realized was, I was looking at this going, okay, they say you'll find their games like BioShock, Baldur's Gate, Fallout, or Gothic. I was like, but Fallout's way, way, way older. Fallout is a classic retro game, an old game. BioShock's not. It's one of the modernish ones. And then I realized Fallout was 97. BioShock was 2007. We're in 2022, which means Fallout is 5 years closer to BioShock than we are to BioShock. Which I don't know about you, but the idea that Fallout and BioShock are closer related is just breaking my brain.
It's quite... It's that thing. Cleopatra was closer to Facebook than she was to the Great Pyramids. That one always gets people.
Yeah.
that weird perception of time. But they say anyway that they believe that celebrating preserving classic games is important and they deserve to be remembered and available for everybody to enjoy. And they're basically just doing what they can to make that good. And I suppose they're just trying to do a better job of that and find more games so that they can then make this a viable niche. Because basically, in the past, right, the good old games thing wasn't the most financially viable thing. So they went to the newer games, trying to be a storefront with their model of collecting their 30% or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But that also didn't really work because they kind of came into the market. Their USP of being DRM free didn't actually fit loads and loads and loads of games and often just caused strange little issues.
Yeah.
So now they're going back, and while it's like what they're doing is great, there's also a bit of a thought of like, well, if this business model didn't work last time, what's different this time? How is it going to change?
They have not particularly answered that question outside of the fact that they're still going to be working on like new releases and stuff, but this is now like their primary focus as an org is like, okay, can we pay the bills while we do this? As opposed to them switching gears to, instead of pay the bills to do the old thing, they basically switch gears to just get money instead. And I think they're like, at some point, they're like, oh yeah, we just go back to doing the thing we did and try to make it work this time. I don't think there's anything major different outside of like, maybe I think preservation stuff is like a bigger question now, because it doesn't take forever for a market to change. And I think like that history, especially when you see how many more like old games are being added on Steam and stuff like that, maybe there's just a case of the market's not big enough. Maybe there's, with the likes of Night Dive operating and doing a bunch of stuff really, really well, maybe it will just work this time because the market's different. Hopefully, maybe. I don't know, really.
Yeah, it's like I think about that. I think, what can you do here? Well, you can maybe publish games a bit like, I've forgotten their name, but the Boomer Shooter publisher.
Oh, yeah.
They could start to do things like that anyway for your games that are more evocative of that era.
Yeah,
There's things that they could try there to kind of like go a little bit deeper into a market like this. But fundamentally, it is a little bit odd that, well, they probably didn't make this decision without thinking about the financial viability.
I would
right?
hope so,
So
yeah.
perhaps something has changed that we just don't know about. Now, we should then talk about their March update. So they got a bunch of feedback, a large part of that because of their Hitman issue, where they basically affirmed what they meant by DRM free. And that's the problem with saying, you're even doing a DRM free marketplace. That doesn't work for AAA publishers.
No.
In very many cases. It just opens them up to vulnerabilities and shit that they don't want any part of, as much as it's good for consumers. So basically they've made it clear what they think. So when they say DRM free, number one, the single player mode has got to be accessed offline. The games you bought and downloaded can never be taken away or altered against your will. And the GOG Galaxy client is and will remain optional for accessing single player offline modes. So that is a different definition of DRM free to what many people will have.
Yeah.
That said, it's realistic. And at least it's good that they have delineated exactly what the fuck's going on so people actually know what they're getting into.
Yeah, that's the thing where I think, especially as we get into kind of, I mean, they'll never have like a big live service on GOG anyway. But imagine, even as an example, Elden Ring. Elden Ring has very few like online elements that people think are like really super crucial. And yet the game constantly gets patches that change stuff. Like, obviously some of it's for the better, some of it's for the worse, but it's like, I guess the first major update nerfed Radahn pretty heavily. And then the next update is like, well, we didn't mean that to happen, so we've reverted him, so he's a bit stronger again. There's like weapon fixes, but there's also like nerfs coming to like weapons that they think's too strong for some of it PvP, some of it just, oh, that's not what we wanted from our game. And then if you wanted to play the old version that you bought, if you wanted to play the disc version, too bad, you can't. Unless you pirate old versions and pirate specific patch things. So specifically that second point of games can't be altered against your will is really interesting to me, because it means that if they want to do a modern AAA game that gets patches, they'll have to go, okay, well, if you want to sell in our store, the patches need to be, you need to be DRM free enough that you can patch if you want to. And I think that's going to be like one of the, I guess that's almost to me one of the most unique things that they'll do, is kind of offer that experience for people who are like, no, you want to play what you want. Here you go. Like, imagine if Warcraft 3 was available here. Then you're like, oh, Oh, I can not have Reforged downloaded. Great. Fantastic.
And that's why it won't be there. One of the many reasons, and it's also why a lot of games won't make it on here, because that's just not what publishers want to do. Even for Elden Ring, like we both looked at the one of the business emails earlier this morning, and we saw an email with the subject Elden Ring cooperation, and it was just from an RMT website.
Yeah.
So it's like, even for things like that, when there is a multiplayer game where there's like, or even like a light multiplayer on top of a single player, like it can then get messy. So it's going to be quite hard for them to pull that off. But I think we want to highlight, though, some of the recent work on Wheel of Time. Purely because on the old game stuff, like, they're putting their money where their mouth is. So this is a really good example. This is an FPS from 1997. Right now credited to GOG and Night Dive. Now, the first instinct that you may have here is just saying, oh, GOG just, sort of the license and contracted Night Dive to do it. But apparently GOG actually did most of the work in getting this going, and Night Dive just helped out a bit. That's kind of interesting. So they're actually doing quite a lot of work in-house to bring these older games up to snuff for modern systems. So for this, you're getting 4K support, widescreen, pre-rendered cutscenes not crashing the game. Pretty good feature. And of course, it's DRM free. And then according to the forums, this is all done in a way that did not break mod support. So loads of, like the texture packs and stuff that will commonly be developed, those all work. There are a few issues, but overall, this is a really good example of them going in, putting out the money to fix up a game like this, and then selling it. And you think about that, and it's like, of all the ways that you could use software developers to earn money, making the Wheel of Time work for modern systems so you can sell it at not a particularly high price in your store.
Like a tenner.
Like, that doesn't come to the top of your mind as the number one way to make money from a software engineer. So they're putting their money where their mouth is, aren't they? That's
exactly it, where this is like, I think they've done a couple things recently as well. Also, I should say it's 1999, not 97. Don't know why I put 97 there. Just my mistake. But it's like that case of, they're clearly not in this to make money above all. They actually are clearly coming into the principle going, we're going to make this work. We're going to have to take some hits. We may not be able to do everything the best way possible, because I know people have a lot of problems with their customer support for a big storefront. They have I think they've got 150 something employees last I was seeing, but people complain about not having customer support and being funneled through to bots. And they had this whole thing of, listen, we're trying to get our customer support bot to be as best as possible because we can't afford to just pay a load of support people. And that's a case of, like, there will be sacrifices for them to do this, but if they're committed to it, and not everyone believes they are, but if they are committed to it, then this is literally just, you've found a unique selling point. And I think not everyone's going to care, but for the people who do care, for the niche of people who care about games from the past, and especially as, games from the far past is growing every day, because, the games suddenly become old games. And I think that just means they've got a really, really interesting place in the market. And I think, I don't want to say people should be thankful for them or anything like that, but it's just really nice to have this actually happen in a world where could they be selling the Wheel of Time at 20 quid and not getting any sales and then rage at customers? Yeah, but they're kind of going, here's for tenner, put a bit of work in, we know that's what you'll maybe pay, please enjoy. Yeah, so basically we like what they're doing. Yep, I really hope it's successful. This is if this can be a viable business, then this would be a really just brilliant, healthy thing to have going on in the industry. So, yeah, credit to them. And I suppose if you're interested in old games, check them out. I think they're pretty deserving of support. That's right. That's it from us. So, see you next time.